The night settles gently over the wide valley of the Nile. The last colors of the evening fade into soft shades of deep blue, and the warm air begins to cool, little by little. A quiet breeze moves through tall reeds beside the river. Water slips slowly around the roots of papyrus plants, carrying the sounds of insects and distant frogs into the darkness. In the villages, small oil lamps still glow inside mud brick homes. Their light is gentle. It reaches only a few corners before becoming soft shadows along the walls. Outside, footsteps become fewer. Voices grow quieter. A donkey lets out one tired call before becoming still. Somewhere nearby, bread that was baked earlier in the day still leaves a faint warm scent in the air. The ancient world is not silent. It is simply peaceful. Tonight, we walk slowly through that peaceful place. Not to visit the great temples or the enormous pyramids. Not to stand beside kings wrapped in gold or watch soldiers returning from distant lands. Instead, we spend our time among ordinary families. People whose names disappeared long ago. People who woke before sunrise, worked until the light faded, and rested beneath simple roofs made from earth and straw. If we listen carefully, their quiet lives still seem close enough to hear. As the stars appear above the desert, imagine yourself lying upon a woven reed mat. The day has already ended. The air carries a little dust from roads that thousands of feet crossed before sunset. A folded linen cloth rests beneath your head. Beyond the doorway, the Nile continues its slow journey north without ever growing tired. Everything moves gently. Everything has found its place. And somewhere within this peaceful world begins a question that many people have quietly carried through every age. Why did growing up sometimes feel emotionally distant? It is not a question that people of ancient Egypt would have asked using those exact words. They did not speak about feelings in the same way many people do today. Yet their daily lives shaped the hearts of children just as surely as the river shaped the land. The answer does not begin with sadness. It begins with routine. Before the first light of morning, while stars still shimmer overhead, the village slowly begins to wake. No loud bells ring. No voices call across the streets. Instead, life returns one sound at a time. A rooster stirs. Someone coughs softly after sleeping in dusty air. A wooden door creaks open. Sandals touch packed earth. The smell of yesterday's ashes mixes with the scent of fresh grain waiting to be ground into flour. Children wake because everyone else wakes. Sleep is not measured by clocks but by sunlight and work. A small boy rubs his eyes while listening to his mother already preparing the day's first meal. She says only a few words. There is little reason for conversation yet. Much of the household still lives inside the quiet rhythm of morning. His father is already outside. There is irrigation to check. Animals need feeding. Fields must be reached before the sun grows strong. The child watches him disappear down the dusty path without ceremony. This happens almost every morning. No dramatic farewell. No long embrace. Only another beginning of another ordinary day. Love is often shown through labor. A father works because grain must grow. A mother bakes because everyone must eat. Hands remain busy from dawn until darkness. Affection exists. It simply wears the clothes of responsibility. As the child grows older, these quiet routines become familiar enough that they almost disappear from notice. He learns by watching. He watches adults carrying baskets balanced across tired shoulders. He watches older sisters fetch water from the river. He watches brothers repairing fishing nets beneath narrow strips of shade. No one gathers children for long lessons about feelings. Instead, every lesson is shown through work. Soon enough, he joins them. His first tasks are small. Perhaps he gathers loose straw after harvest. Perhaps he carries tiny jars between family members. Perhaps he keeps birds away from drying grain by waving his arms every few moments. The work is simple. Yet it teaches something larger. Every person belongs to the rhythm of the household. Everyone contributes. Even the youngest hands slowly become useful. The days repeat themselves with remarkable steadiness. Morning begins before sunrise. The hottest hours pass slowly beneath the burning sky. Afternoon carries the scent of dust and warm stone. Evening brings bread, lentils, onions, dates, and quiet conversation. Night offers rest before another identical morning arrives. Children grow inside repetition. Many memories become impossible to separate from one another because each season resembles the last. There are moments of laughter. There are songs while grinding grain. There are stories whispered beside evening lamps. Yet these moments appear between endless hours of labor. Life leaves little empty space. A child quickly understands that adults are often tired. Their parents do not ignore them because they lack affection. They simply carry enormous responsibilities. The fields cannot wait. The river cannot wait. Animals cannot wait. Bread cannot wait. The seasons never slow down. During the flood season, everyone watches the Nile carefully. Its waters rise with quiet power. Fields disappear beneath shining water. Farmers study the river's height with patient attention because the coming harvest depends upon it. Children stand nearby, watching adults speak with serious faces. The river decides much of life. No family can control it. No child fully understands this. They only notice that the grown ups seem occupied by things larger than themselves. Sometimes the father returns home after sunset with aching shoulders. His hands carry fresh scratches from reeds or rough rope. He washes quietly. He eats quietly. Soon afterward he sleeps. The child wishes to tell him about something interesting, a bird's nest discovered near the riverbank or a clay toy shaped earlier that afternoon. But exhaustion settles over the room before many words can be spoken. Tomorrow offers another chance. Tomorrow arrives much the same. This pattern repeats across many years. Without anyone intending it, emotional distance quietly grows between generations. Not because love is missing. Because time is. Inside crowded workshops another child learns different lessons. His father shapes wooden furniture. The room smells of fresh cut timber and sawdust. Simple tools rest against rough walls. Hammering echoes softly throughout the morning. Customers arrive carrying requests. Measurements must be remembered. Mistakes waste valuable wood. The child spends hours watching careful hands transform rough boards into smooth chairs and chests. Conversation happens only when needed. Concentration fills the room. Silence becomes another teacher. He begins helping by sweeping the floor. Later he learns how to smooth rough edges using sandstone. Years pass almost unnoticed. The workshop slowly becomes both school and home. His father rarely praises him with many words. Instead, one quiet nod after a well-finished task says enough. Approval comes through trust. Responsibility grows one careful step at a time. Children learn to understand these quiet signs. They become skilled at reading expressions instead of speeches. A slight smile. A gentle nod. An extra piece of bread offered at supper. A place beside an older worker. These become the language of affection. The village itself encourages this way of living. Homes stand close together. Neighbors know each other's routines. Smoke rises from many ovens each morning. Children play briefly in narrow spaces before returning to work. Old women sit outside spinning flax into thread. Their hands never stop moving. Even conversation follows the rhythm of useful work. Everything feels connected. The sound of grinding stones echoes from house to house. Goats wander between walls searching for scraps. Cats stretch lazily beneath patches of sunlight. The smell of baking bread drifts through open doorways. Life moves steadily. There is comfort in knowing what tomorrow will likely bring. Yet children also discover that their own feelings must often wait. If someone falls and scrapes a knee, comfort comes quickly. The wound is washed. A cloth is wrapped around it. Then work resumes. There is little opportunity to linger over tears. The harvest cannot pause. The cooking cannot pause. The animals still require care. Children slowly become resilient. Not because they never hurt. Because life continues regardless. As seasons pass, the young learn another quiet lesson. Adults often carry worries they never explain. Poor harvests. Changing river levels. Unexpected illness. Broken tools. Taxes. Every concern settles quietly upon their shoulders. Children notice these changes without understanding them completely. They recognize silence. They recognize tired eyes. They recognize slower footsteps after difficult days. But explanations remain few. Not from secrecy. Simply because words are precious when energy is scarce. In many homes, evenings become the closest thing to peaceful family time. The day's heat finally softens. The breeze returns through open doorways. Oil lamps flicker against mud walls. Simple meals are shared. Someone tells an old story about clever animals or patient farmers. Grandparents sometimes remember seasons from many years before. Children listen carefully. Their imagination travels farther than their feet ever have. For a little while, everyone rests together. These evenings become treasured memories. Not because they are extraordinary. Because they are gentle. Because nobody is rushing. Because everyone has survived another day together. And perhaps that quiet feeling remains with the child long after the details disappear. Growing older arrives almost unnoticed. One year a child follows adults. The next year adults expect that child to lead smaller ones. Responsibilities appear gradually. There is no single morning when childhood ends. It simply becomes smaller while work becomes larger. Hands grow rougher. Feet become stronger. Shoulders learn to carry weight. The heart also changes. Not through one dramatic event. Through thousands of ordinary mornings. Some children enter schools attached to temples or government offices. They become apprentice scribes. Their lives differ from farmers, yet many rhythms remain familiar. They rise early. They copy signs carefully onto broken pieces of pottery before earning precious sheets of papyrus. Mistakes require repetition. Patience becomes essential. Teachers speak firmly. Precision matters. The work demands quiet concentration for many hours. A young scribe may spend an entire morning copying symbols with careful hands. Outside, the world continues. Boats move along the Nile. Market sellers arrange vegetables. Builders carry stone. Fishermen pull in nets. Inside the classroom, only scratching reeds and patient breathing fill the air. Even here, childhood becomes closely connected with responsibility. The future depends upon discipline. Adults believe this deeply. Few question it. Children accept it because every family around them lives much the same way. No one imagines another kind of world. No one dreams of endless leisure. The seasons teach everyone that survival comes through steady effort. And so affection often hides beneath expectation. Parents expect children to learn because they hope life will become easier for them. Teachers correct mistakes because accuracy brings opportunity. Masters assign difficult work because skill must be earned. Their kindness appears practical, quiet, sometimes almost invisible. Only years later might someone understand how much care rested inside those ordinary expectations. Outside once more, the afternoon sun shines brightly across fields ready for planting. Farmers walk slowly behind oxen pulling wooden plows. Children scatter seeds with practiced hands. The soil smells rich after the flood waters have withdrawn. Birds circle overhead hoping for easy meals. Sweat gathers beneath simple linen clothing. Nobody rushes. The work itself decides the pace. Hours pass beneath the warm sky. Voices remain calm. The earth receives each careful step without complaint. And somewhere nearby, another child quietly watches adults working side by side. Learning. Growing. Listening. Feeling loved, perhaps, not through long conversations, but through the steady promise that tomorrow everyone will wake together once again beneath the same rising sun. Morning arrives so gently that it almost seems to grow out of the night itself. The stars fade one by one until only the brightest remain above the western horizon. The eastern sky becomes pale, then softly golden. Before the first rays of sunlight reach the village, people are already awake. A faint glow escapes through open doorways where cooking fires have been stirred back to life. Thin ribbons of smoke rise into the still air before drifting toward the river. The smell of fresh grain fills many homes. Stone grinding wheels begin their slow, familiar song. One woman kneels beside a flat stone, turning it with practiced hands. The movement is steady, almost peaceful. Grain becomes flour little by little, just as every day becomes another small piece of a lifetime. Her daughter sits nearby, still waking fully, brushing tiny bits of straw from her linen blanket before quietly joining the morning work. Few words are needed. Both of them already know exactly what must be done. In homes throughout ancient Egypt, children learned long before they could explain their own thoughts. They learned by watching careful hands. They learned by copying familiar movements. They learned by living inside routines that had already shaped countless generations before them. The mother places flour into a simple clay bowl. Water is added carefully. Salt, if the household has enough, is mixed into the dough. Strong hands begin kneading until the rough mixture slowly becomes smooth. The child watches every motion. Soon those same small hands will repeat them. No formal lesson begins. No announcement is made. Knowledge passes quietly from one pair of hands to another. Perhaps this is one reason childhood often felt emotionally distant. Adults were almost always teaching. But they were rarely sitting still. Instruction happened while carrying water. Advice came while mending baskets. Stories were told while baking bread. Even affection often appeared in the middle of work instead of apart from it. For a child hoping simply to spend time beside a parent, work itself became the meeting place. The family steps outside together. The morning air is cool enough to enjoy for a little while longer. Soon the desert sun will climb high, pressing warm light across every roof and every field. For now, the village still feels gentle. Goats wander slowly between houses. Cats stretch lazily after the night. A few fishermen pass along the road carrying tightly rolled nets over one shoulder. Their sandals leave quiet prints in the dust before the breeze gradually smooths them away. Children notice everything. They watch the fishermen disappear toward the Nile. They wonder how many fish will be caught today. Perhaps they imagine riding in one of the small wooden boats that already wait along the riverbank. But imagination cannot last very long. There are baskets to carry, clay jars to fill, animals to tend. The rhythm of the day gently calls everyone forward. Along the river, the world awakens with quiet purpose. The Nile seems almost asleep itself. Its surface reflects the growing light like polished bronze. Small ripples spread behind ducks gliding through reeds. Dragonflies hover above the water before darting away again. Fishermen push their boats into the current with long wooden poles. The boats move without hurry. Everything about the river teaches patience. The child standing nearby watches silently. Perhaps a father is among those fishermen. Perhaps an older brother. There is pride in watching them work. There is also distance. Hours will pass before they return. Many children spent much of their lives separated from parents simply because daily survival required it. The river gives food. The fields give grain. The workshops produce tools. None of these tasks can be delayed for long conversations. As the boats drift farther away, the child turns back toward the village. Another day has already begun. Inside one modest home, an elderly grandmother remains behind while the younger adults leave for work. Her knees no longer carry her easily through long days in the fields. Instead, she watches the youngest children while preparing simple meals. These quiet hours become precious. Grandparents often have something younger adults lack: time. The old woman sits beneath the shade near the doorway, weaving reeds into small mats. Tiny fingers attempt to copy her movements. They fail again and again. She smiles softly without laughing. Patiently she begins once more. There is kindness here. Not dramatic kindness. Simply the calm willingness to repeat a lesson as many times as needed. Perhaps this is where many children found their gentlest moments. Older people often moved more slowly. Their pace matched childhood better than the hurried rhythm of working adults. The grandmother tells stories while weaving. She remembers years when the Nile rose especially high. She remembers neighbors who have long since disappeared into memory. She remembers songs her own mother once sang while baking bread before sunrise. The stories drift gently through the warm air. Some details become mixed together. Some names are forgotten. Children do not mind. They listen anyway. They enjoy the sound of a familiar voice more than perfect accuracy. Outside, the village grows busier. Merchants arrive carrying woven baskets filled with onions, garlic, figs, and dates. A donkey loaded with pottery walks carefully through the narrow street. Dust rises beneath every hoof. Sunlight catches countless tiny grains floating through the air until they sparkle for a moment before settling again. The market is never completely quiet. People bargain politely. Weights are checked. Bundles change hands. Fresh vegetables are arranged upon simple cloths spread across the ground. Children often wander nearby, watching the grown UPS with endless curiosity. Everything seems interesting. A basket filled with bright fruit. A carved wooden toy. A colorful piece of linen. The smell of fresh bread. The sharp scent of onions. The cool feeling of a clay water jar after standing in the shade. Their world is rich with small discoveries. Yet adults continue moving from one task to another. Responsibility shapes every hour. A young apprentice follows his master through the crowded marketplace. Today they must purchase copper before returning to the workshop. The apprentice carries a small basket. The master carries experience. Very little conversation passes between them. The older man expects careful observation. He believes watching teaches more than speaking. The boy understands. He notices which merchant offers better metal. He notices which scales seem honest. He notices how respectful greetings are exchanged before business begins. These quiet lessons become part of growing older. Many emotions remain unspoken because knowledge itself feels more urgent. The morning continues. Heat slowly gathers across the land. Stone walls begin holding warmth. Sand beneath bare feet grows hotter with every passing hour. Workers wrap cloth around their heads. Some pause briefly to drink cool water carried in clay jars. Others continue steadily despite tired muscles. Children work beside them. They are not expected to match the strength of adults. But they are expected to help. Little by little, responsibility becomes ordinary. The line between childhood and adulthood remains soft. There is no single moment when everything changes. Instead, each season quietly adds another duty. 1 year a child carries only empty baskets. Soon those baskets return full. Later they carry tools. Later still they guide younger children through the same familiar work. Growing older feels less like climbing steps and more like walking along gentle road. Sometimes illness interrupts this peaceful rhythm. The desert climate can be unforgiving. A fever spreads through a household. Someone develops a cough after breathing dust for many weeks. A painful tooth makes eating difficult. Children watch adults continue working despite discomfort. Rest is valuable. Yet survival often demands movement. The family cannot stop entirely. Neighbors help where they can. Bread is shared. Water is carried. Animals are fed. Communities quietly support one another because everyone understands hardship. Children learn another lesson. Strength does not always appear loud. Sometimes strength simply means rising before dawn despite aching muscles. Sometimes it means sharing the last handful of grain. Sometimes it means saying very little while continuing forward. These lessons remain in the heart long after childhood ends. As afternoon arrives, shadows become short. The village grows quieter for a little while. Even birds seem slower beneath the heavy sun. Some workers pause beneath palm trees. Others sit beside mud brick walls where a narrow strip of shade offers relief. A father removes his sandals and rubs sore feet. Nearby, his son imitates the same movement although his feet have walked only a fraction of the distance. The father notices. Without speaking, he smiles gently. The boy smiles back. Nothing more is needed. This silent exchange lasts only a moment. Soon both stand again. The work continues. Perhaps many ancient children remembered moments exactly like this. Not long conversations. Not grand speeches. Only small signs that they were seen. A shared drink of cool water. A piece of fresh bread offered first. A hand resting briefly upon a shoulder before returning to work. Affection often lived inside these quiet gestures. They were easy to overlook. Yet they carried deep meaning. As evening slowly approaches, fishermen return to the village. Their boats glide toward shore beneath skies turning pale gold. Fish shimmer inside woven baskets. Nets drip quietly into the river. Children hurry to greet them. Some fathers lift heavy baskets without complaint despite long hours upon the water. Others stretch aching backs before beginning the walk home. The river has given enough for another meal. Everyone feels grateful. The day's labor slowly gives way to evening routines. Smoke rises from cooking fires once more. The smell of roasting fish drifts through the streets. Bread warms beside glowing coals. Clay jars filled with cool water are passed from hand to hand. Families gather inside simple homes where oil lamps chase away the growing darkness. The day's conversations finally begin. Not because people suddenly have more words. Because they finally have a little more time. Children speak about small discoveries. Perhaps they found an unusual shell beside the river. Perhaps they saw a young ibis searching through shallow water. Perhaps they learned to weave a stronger basket. Adults listen while eating. Sometimes they answer with gentle advice. Sometimes they simply nod. Exhaustion still fills the room. But now it shares space with quiet companionship. After supper, the village grows peaceful again. The sky above the Nile fills with stars so bright they seem close enough to touch. Warm air carries the scent of damp reeds and distant water. Some families remain outside for a little while, enjoying the cooler evening. Older people sit together remembering seasons that have already passed. Children lie upon woven mats, watching constellations drift slowly overhead. They wonder about tomorrow. They wonder about the future. Yet tomorrow will probably look much like today. The same dusty roads. The same warm bread. The same river flowing steadily north. The same careful work shared among family members. Within this endless rhythm, childhood quietly continues. Not empty. Not unloved. Simply shaped by a world where affection was often expressed through steady presence instead of many words. A parent who rose every morning before sunrise to prepare food. A father who repaired a broken sandal after returning from the fields. A grandmother who patiently retold the same story beneath the evening sky. A neighbor who shared water during difficult weeks. These acts formed the quiet language of care. Children grew surrounded by it every day, even if they could not always recognize it while they were still small. And as another peaceful night settles over the ancient village, the gentle sounds of the Nile once again become the final voice before sleep, flowing patiently through darkness just as it has for countless generations, carrying with it another ordinary day that will soon become another quiet memory. The night deepens with gentle patience. One by one, the small oil lamps inside the village begin to fade. Some families save every drop of precious oil, allowing darkness to settle naturally once evening conversations come to an end. Others leave a tiny flame burning beside the doorway, just enough to guide anyone who wakes before dawn. Beyond the homes, the Nile continues its quiet journey. The water does not hurry. It has flowed through this valley long before these families were born, and it will continue long after their footprints have disappeared beneath drifting sand. The river knows only its steady rhythm. Perhaps that is why so much of life beside it also becomes steady. Inside one small mud brick home, a family settles onto woven reed mats spread across the packed earth floor. There are no separate bedrooms filled with privacy. Parents, children, and sometimes grandparents rest close together. A sleeping child can hear the slow breathing of every person nearby. The room feels warm from the day's heat, although the cooler night air gradually slips through the open doorway. Somewhere outside, a donkey shifts its weight. A dog gives a single quiet bark before settling once more. The sounds become part of the night, familiar enough that nobody pays much attention to them. A young child lies awake for a little while longer. The ceiling above is made from wooden beams covered with reeds and mud. Tiny cracks allow the faintest glimpse of starlight. Dust floats gently through the last glow of the dying lamp. The child listens. The breathing beside them is calm. The world feels safe. Yet tomorrow already waits. Morning will arrive early. It always does. Even while children sleep, their lives remain shaped by the work waiting with the sunrise. Many modern ideas about childhood imagine long seasons of carefree days. But in ancient Egypt, childhood was closely tied to becoming useful within the family. This was not considered harsh or unusual. It was simply the natural path of life. Every pair of hands mattered. Even the smallest ones. As children grew stronger, they were trusted with slightly larger responsibilities. Trust itself became a quiet expression of love. A father might hand his son a small wooden tool and allow him to carry it alone. A mother might ask her daughter to prepare part of the morning meal without watching every movement. These moments were important. They said something simple. You are growing. We believe you can do this. Those words were not always spoken aloud. They were shown through opportunity. Long before sunrise, the village begins another gentle awakening. The eastern horizon slowly brightens. The air feels cool enough that every breath seems fresh after the warmth of the previous afternoon. A fisherman quietly unties the rope securing his boat. Nearby, another family walks toward the river carrying empty clay jars. Their sandals leave soft marks in the damp earth near the water's edge. Children walk beside them. Sometimes they chatter softly. Sometimes they simply enjoy the peaceful silence. Morning silence is different from evening silence. It feels full of expectation rather than rest. The day has not yet asked anything from anyone. For a few brief moments, everyone shares the same calm beginning. Water is lifted from the Nile into heavy jars. The cool clay feels damp against tired hands. Children learn how to balance smaller jars upon their shoulders. At first, they stumble. The jars tilt. Water spills onto the dusty ground. Nobody becomes angry. The lesson simply begins again. One careful step. Then another. Eventually, balance becomes natural. Years later, they no longer remember learning it at all. So many parts of growing up happen this way. Practice becomes habit. Habit becomes memory. Memory becomes identity. Inside another home, a young girl helps prepare flax fibers for weaving. Bundles of pale fibers rest beside her grandmother. Patient fingers separate each strand before twisting them together into long threads. The work requires attention but not great strength. As their hands move steadily, the grandmother hums an old melody. The tune has no audience. It belongs only to the quiet morning. The child listens closely. Without realizing it, she begins humming along. Perhaps she will remember this melody many decades later. Perhaps she will hum it herself while teaching another little child. In this way, emotions travel quietly across generations. Not always through conversations. Sometimes through songs. Sometimes through familiar scents. Sometimes through simple routines repeated so often that they become part of the heart. The village slowly fills with sunlight. Palm trees cast long shadows across narrow paths. The walls of mud brick homes glow with warm golden colors before the stronger light of midday washes everything into brighter shades. Goats wander between courtyards. Chickens scratch the earth searching for tiny insects. Cats stretch lazily upon flat rooftops already warmed by the early sun. Life feels peaceful. Yet everyone remains busy. The baker has already begun shaping dozens of small loaves. Warm dough rests beneath linen cloths while ovens grow hotter. The smell drifts through the neighborhood, making hungry children smile before breakfast is even ready. A boy carrying reeds pauses for just a moment. He breathes deeply. Fresh bread always smells comforting. His mother notices him smiling. Without saying anything, she tears off a small piece from yesterday's loaf and places it gently into his hand. It is not much, but it is enough. He smiles again before hurrying back to his task. This small exchange lasts only a few seconds. No speeches. No grand display. Yet perhaps years later, that simple piece of bread remains among his warmest memories. Many ancient families expressed affection through care rather than conversation. Food prepared before dawn. Clothing repaired after sunset. A blanket adjusted while a child slept. These quiet acts rarely became stories. Yet they filled ordinary life. The workshops become busy as the morning grows brighter. Stonemasons lift heavy blocks. Carpenters smooth rough wood into useful furniture. Potters shape wet clay beneath steady hands. Metal workers carefully heat copper over glowing charcoal. Children move carefully through these busy places. They fetch water. Carry finished pieces. Sweep away dust. Watch experienced craftsmen with endless attention. The air inside the workshops carries many scents. Fresh wood. Warm clay. Smoke. Sweat. Dry reeds. Everything blends together into the familiar smell of work. No one expects perfection from young apprentices. Mistakes happen. A clay bowl collapses. A wooden edge becomes uneven. A woven basket loosens. Each mistake teaches patience. Masters rarely offer long explanations. Instead, they quietly begin again. The child watches. Copies. Learns. Little by little, confidence replaces uncertainty. Growing up often means discovering that adults themselves are still learning. A father repairing a fishing net occasionally sighs when a knot slips loose. A farmer studies the clouds, unsure whether enough water will arrive next season. A merchant carefully counts goods twice before leaving the market. Children notice these moments. Adults are not as certain as they once seemed. Yet they continue working. This lesson may be one of the most comforting of all. Life does not require perfect certainty. Only steady effort. As midday approaches, the heat becomes difficult to ignore. The sunlight reflects from pale stone walls. Even gentle breezes feel warm. Workers seek whatever shade they can find. Palm trees become welcome shelters. Mud brick walls remain pleasantly cool inside. Clay jars filled with river water are wrapped in damp cloth, helping the water stay refreshing despite the rising temperature. Children drink slowly. Tiny drops roll down the sides of the jars before disappearing into the dry earth. Some families pause for a simple meal. Bread. Onions. Dates. Perhaps a little dried fish. Perhaps beans cooked earlier that morning. The meal is plain. But hunger makes every bite satisfying. Families often eat together when work allows. Conversation remains gentle. Many words are unnecessary among people who already know one another's daily lives so well. A father asks whether the goats behaved. A mother wonders if enough flax has been prepared. An older sister reminds a younger brother to finish repairing a basket. Simple questions. Simple answers. These conversations quietly hold a family together. After eating, the youngest children sometimes become sleepy. The afternoon heat encourages rest. One little girl curls beside her grandmother beneath a woven awning. The older woman gently brushes dust from the child's hair. No words are spoken. The child falls asleep within moments. This gesture may seem small, yet it carries tenderness every bit as real as spoken affection. Quiet care often leaves the deepest memories. Nearby, older children continue working. Their childhood slowly stretches toward adulthood. Each passing year brings stronger muscles, greater expectations, longer days. Yet inside, many still wish for moments of simple comfort. A kind glance, a gentle smile, a patient teacher. Growing older never completely removes those quiet hopes. As the afternoon slowly fades toward evening, long shadows return across the village. The harsh brightness softens. Birds become more active again, calling from reeds beside the Nile. Fishermen prepare to return. Farmers gather their tools. Builders stack unused stone neatly for tomorrow. Children help carry smaller bundles home. The road fills with familiar faces walking the same paths they have followed countless times before. Dust rises gently around their feet. No one rushes. There is comfort in ending another day's work. The village begins changing once more. Cooking fires send fragrant smoke into the cooling air. Fresh bread emerges from ovens. Clay cups are filled with cool water. Neighbors greet one another as they pass. Some exchange vegetables. Others borrow simple tools. Communities survive because people quietly depend upon one another. Children witness this generosity every day. They learn that families rarely stand entirely alone. The evening meal draws everyone together once again. The day's work is finished. For now. Oil lamps glow softly inside each home. Outside, the sky slowly fills with stars. The youngest children lean against tired parents while listening to slow conversations that drift through the warm night air. No one speaks about emotions directly. Yet they are everywhere. In the shared meal. In repaired clothing. In aching hands that still prepared tomorrow's bread before resting. In quiet patience shown after a mistake. In the familiar voice telling one more story before sleep. Perhaps this is why growing up in the ancient world could feel emotionally distant while also being deeply connected. Love was rarely separated from duty. Care was woven into ordinary work. Affection appeared in steady routines more often than spoken declarations. Children learned to recognize these quiet signs because they surrounded them every day. And as another peaceful night settles gently beside the Nile, the river continues flowing beneath the moonlight, carrying reflections of countless stars across its calm surface, while the village rests together beneath the endless sky, preparing once again for another slow and ordinary dawn. The darkness lingers for a little while longer before the horizon begins to soften. Far beyond the eastern desert, the first hint of morning quietly lifts the edge of the night. The stars do not disappear all at once. Instead, they slowly surrender their place to the growing light, fading as gently as old memories. The Nile reflects every change. For a few peaceful moments, the river seems to hold both night and morning together upon its surface. A fisherman already stands knee-deep in the cool water, adjusting the ropes of his small wooden boat. He works almost without sound. The movements have become so familiar that his hands seem to know the task by themselves. He learned these motions from his own father. His father learned them from another before him. Generations have passed in much the same way. Not through written lessons. Not through long speeches. But through quiet observation beside the river. Nearby, a young boy waits patiently. His father has finally decided that today he is old enough to help push the boat into deeper water. The boy says nothing. He simply places both hands against the weathered wood. The boat feels heavier than he imagined. His sandals slip slightly in the wet mud. His arms strain. His father notices immediately. Without embarrassment or disappointment, the older man silently moves closer and shares more of the weight. Together, the boat slides smoothly into the current. No praise is spoken. No celebration follows. Yet the child feels something important. He has been trusted. Sometimes trust becomes one of the quietest forms of affection. As the boat drifts away, the father glances back toward the shore for only a brief moment. He lifts one hand. The boy raises his own. Then both return to their work. The exchange lasts only a heartbeat. Yet it will remain in the boy's memory long after the details of the day have faded. Throughout the villages of ancient Egypt, many children slowly collected memories just like this. Not grand occasions. Not unforgettable festivals. But tiny moments of recognition. A hand resting briefly upon a shoulder. A nod of approval after a task well completed. An invitation to carry a tool that had once belonged only to an adult. Growing older often happened through these quiet invitations. Back in the village, another family begins preparing for a different kind of work. A mother kneels beside several bundles of flax that have dried beneath the sun over many days. She carefully separates the fibers. Her daughter sits opposite her. At first, the child simply watches. The woman's fingers move with remarkable ease. Twist. Pull. Smooth. Fold. Repeat. The rhythm almost resembles breathing. Soon the girl attempts the same motions. The thread breaks. She tries again. It breaks once more. The mother smiles softly. Without speaking, she reaches over, takes the damaged fibers, and begins another demonstration. Nothing about the lesson feels hurried. Time itself seems to slow whenever experience is quietly shared. Many children likely remembered these peaceful mornings more clearly than any single important event. The smell of flax drying in warm air. Dust floating through beams of sunlight entering the doorway. The sound of pigeons fluttering across nearby rooftops. The gentle scratching of straw baskets against the floor. Ordinary mornings quietly became the foundation of entire lives. As the sun climbs higher, more villagers step onto the dusty roads. Merchants prepare their donkeys. Builders shoulder wooden poles. Servants hurry toward larger homes where the day's work is already beginning. The streets slowly fill with movement. Yet even among many people, there is little noise. Voices remain calm. People greet one another with familiar respect. Everyone understands that another long day has only just begun. Children weave through the growing crowd carrying simple errands from one household to another. One girl carefully balances a clay bowl filled with fresh bread. She walks slowly, concentrating with every step. The bread is meant for an elderly neighbor whose knees no longer allow her to grind grain easily. The girl has carried meals there many times before. The old woman always thanks her warmly. Sometimes she offers a date in return. Sometimes only a smile. The child never knows which it will be. Either gift feels welcome. This simple walk becomes another quiet lesson. Communities survive because kindness travels in ordinary ways. No one expects rewards. People simply help one another because someday they too may need gentle hands. As children witness these exchanges year after year, they begin to understand that belonging reaches beyond their own family. The village itself becomes an extended household. Every familiar face carries a small piece of shared life. At the edge of the settlement, fields stretch toward the shimmering horizon. The floodwaters have long since retreated, leaving rich dark soil behind. Farmers bend steadily over young crops. The work is repetitive. Pulling weeds. Checking irrigation channels. Watching carefully for signs of healthy growth. Children often accompany them. A small boy kneels beside his grandfather, studying tiny green shoots pushing through the earth. The older man brushes loose soil aside with weathered fingers. He explains very little. Instead, he points. The child observes. Healthy plants. Dry roots. Tiny insects. Everything becomes part of the lesson. Learning through careful attention shapes much of childhood. There is little separation between work and education. The field itself becomes a classroom. The river becomes a teacher. The workshop becomes a place of discovery. Even quiet moments of rest offer lessons. By midday, the heat presses gently but steadily across the valley. The air above the fields begins to shimmer. Workers wipe perspiration from their foreheads with linen cloths. Children seek narrow strips of shade beside mud walls or clusters of date palms. Water jars become especially valuable now. Cool river water tastes wonderfully refreshing after hours beneath the bright sun. One father hands the clay cup to his daughter before drinking himself. She accepts it without surprise. Small acts like these happen every day. No one announces their importance. Yet children remember who shared water first. Who offered the larger piece of bread. Who quietly repaired worn sandals before they completely fell apart. Love often leaves its strongest marks in practical moments. Nearby, a group of young apprentices works inside a stone workshop. Large limestone blocks wait to be shaped into smooth building pieces. The older craftsmen swing copper tools with practiced precision. Tap. Pause. Tap again. Stone dust floats lazily through shafts of sunlight. The younger boys gather broken fragments into baskets. Their backs ache after many hours. Their hands become rough despite their age. One apprentice glances toward the doorway where sunlight promises open air beyond the dusty room. For just a moment, he imagines running freely beside the Nile. Then the master quietly calls his name. Without complaint, the boy returns to work. Such moments were probably common. Children dreamed. Adults continued working. Dreams waited until evening. As the afternoon slowly unfolds, the village settles into its familiar rhythm once more. Some mothers prepare vegetables for the evening meal. Others patch worn linen clothing with careful stitches. An elderly man patiently repairs fishing nets beneath the shade of a sycamore tree. His fingers move slowly now. Age has reduced his speed. But not his skill. A young grandson watches closely. The old man occasionally pauses to let the child tie one section himself. The knot is clumsy. Loose. Uneven. The grandfather quietly unties it and begins again. There is no anger. Only patience. The lesson matters more than the mistake. Perhaps this patient repetition helped shape the emotional lives of many children. Errors were expected. Growth came through trying again. Even so, praise remained modest. Success was treated as another step rather than a final destination. Children learned satisfaction from completing useful work instead of hearing constant approval. For some, this created quiet confidence. For others, it left a lasting desire to earn another nod, another smile, another brief sign that they had done well. The sun finally begins its slow descent. Golden light stretches across the river. Palm leaves shimmer softly in the evening breeze. Birds cross the sky in graceful lines as they return toward familiar nesting places. The village breathes differently now. The hardest hours have passed. Tools are cleaned before being stored. Animals are gathered safely for the night. Dust settles slowly onto roads that only moments earlier were filled with busy footsteps. Children seem lighter in the evening. Responsibilities loosen for a short while. Some chase one another between houses. Others shape little animals from leftover clay. A few gather smooth stones from the riverbank and invent quiet games whose rules have been passed from child to child for generations. Their laughter rises gently into the cooling air. Adults hear it while preparing supper. Some smile without looking up from their work. Perhaps they remember making the same sounds long ago. The evening meal brings everyone back together once again. Fresh bread is broken. Fish caught that morning are shared among the family. Dates rest inside simple woven bowls. The smell of herbs fills the small room. Oil lamps flicker softly against the walls, painting warm shadows across familiar faces. Conversation remains gentle. Someone mentions tomorrow's work in the fields. Another wonders whether the river will rise well this season. Children listen carefully. Even when they seem distracted, they are quietly collecting the knowledge that one day will guide their own families. After the meal, the pace slows even further. The youngest children grow sleepy. An older sister gently brushes dust from her little brother's hair. Their mother folds blankets made from woven linen. Outside, neighbors linger beneath the stars for a few peaceful moments before returning indoors. The air now feels pleasantly cool after the long heat of the day. The scent of damp reeds drifts from the Nile. A soft breeze carries distant sounds of frogs calling from the riverbanks. Everything feels settled. The village rests together. And within this peaceful rhythm, another ordinary day quietly slips into memory. No one realizes that these countless simple evenings will someday become the invisible threads connecting childhood to adulthood. A shared meal. A repaired sandal. A grandfather's patient hands. A mother's silent encouragement. A father's quiet trust. None of these moments appear extraordinary while they are happening. Yet together they gently shape the hearts of children growing beside the timeless waters of the Nile, where another calm night now stretches beneath a sky filled with endless stars, waiting patiently for another dawn that will arrive as softly as every dawn before it. Before the first bird greets the morning, before the smoke from cooking fires rises above the rooftops, there is a short and gentle moment when the village seems to belong only to the night. The air feels cooler now. The heavy warmth of yesterday has drifted away, leaving behind a softness that lasts only until sunrise. The stars still shine above the desert, reflected in the calm water of the Nile. Every reflection trembles slightly as the current slips quietly toward the distant sea. A lone fisherman walks the familiar path to the river. His sandals press lightly into the cool earth. He carries a folded net over one shoulder and a small clay lamp in one hand. Its flame is weak, yet it is enough to guide each careful step. He has walked this same path for many years. Long ago, when he was only a boy, he followed behind his own father along this very road. At that time, the fishing net had seemed impossibly large. The river had appeared endless. Every morning felt like the beginning of a great mystery. Now the mystery has become routine. His own son follows several steps behind him. The boy carries only a rope. It is a small responsibility, but it matters. His father trusts him with it. Neither of them feels the need to fill the quiet with conversation. The silence itself has become comfortable after so many mornings together. They hear gentle water against the riverbank. They hear insects hidden among the reeds. Far away, another family is already grinding grain for bread. The sound reaches them faintly through the cool air. Even before sunrise, the village is slowly waking. The boy watches his father prepare the boat. Every movement seems effortless. The knots are tied quickly. The oars are checked. The net is folded one final time before being laid carefully inside the boat. The child studies each motion without being asked. He already understands that one day these tasks will belong to him. Knowledge travels quietly. No scroll records every lesson. No teacher stands beside a painted wall explaining each detail. Instead, children carry entire lifetimes of learning simply by paying attention. Perhaps this way of learning also shaped the way children understood love. Affection was not separated from teaching. Instruction itself became an act of care. The father spends time showing the boy how to repair a torn section of net because he hopes his child will always have enough food to place upon the family table. His patience is hidden inside the lesson. The sun finally begins to rise. Golden light slowly spreads across the river until every ripple glows softly. Birds lift into the morning sky. Their wings flash briefly before disappearing into the brightening distance. The boat drifts away from shore. The boy watches until it becomes only a small shape upon the shining water. Then he turns toward the village. There is work waiting there too. As the streets slowly fill with people, another household begins its own familiar rhythm. A young girl wakes beside her younger sister. The little one is still asleep, her breathing slow and peaceful. Carefully, the older sister folds the woven blanket and places it neatly against the wall. She has learned to move quietly in the early morning. She knows that kindness sometimes means allowing someone a few more moments of rest. Their mother notices. She smiles gently. No words are exchanged. The smile is enough. Inside the home, flour is already waiting in a clay bowl. The mother pours fresh water into it. Together, they knead the dough. The girl's hands are still small. Sometimes the dough sticks stubbornly to her fingers. She laughs softly under her breath. Her mother reaches over, dusts a little more flour across the mixture, and continues working. Soon the dough becomes smooth. The child quietly remembers the feeling. One day she will teach another pair of small hands exactly the same motion. The oven grows warmer. The smell of baking bread slowly escapes through the doorway. Neighbors walking past recognize the familiar scent immediately. Across the village, dozens of homes are preparing nearly identical meals. Different families. Different names. The same comforting rhythm. There is something deeply reassuring about ordinary mornings that rarely change. Children may not realize it while they are living them, but those repeated routines slowly become the strongest memories of home. Many years later, they may forget individual conversations. They may forget exactly what happened during one particular harvest. Yet they will remember the smell of fresh bread before sunrise. They will remember warm clay beneath bare feet. They will remember hearing their parents begin work while the stars were still fading. Memory often chooses simple things. As the morning grows brighter, the marketplace slowly comes alive. Merchants arrange baskets filled with onions, lentils, figs, dates, and garlic. Potters carefully display freshly fired bowls whose smooth surfaces catch the sunlight. Carpenters lean finished stools and chests outside their workshops. Everything is prepared with quiet pride. Children wander through the market carrying small errands from their families. One boy has been asked to purchase a bundle of reeds. He walks carefully, repeating his mother's instructions over and over inside his mind. He worries that he might forget. The merchant greets him kindly. The reeds are counted together. The boy hands over the correct payment with great concentration. When he returns home successfully, his mother simply nods. You remembered. Only 2 words. Yet they fill him with quiet satisfaction. He has become a little more dependable today. Growing older often happened through these almost invisible victories. Not celebrations. Not ceremonies. Simply another small task completed well. The confidence built slowly, one ordinary day at a time. Farther along the dusty road, builders continue raising walls for a new storage building. Large mud bricks pass from one pair of hands to another. Each worker moves steadily. No one wastes movement. Children helping nearby carry only the lighter bricks. Even so, they pause often to wipe sweat from their faces. The heat arrives earlier now. By midday, the air seems almost still. Only an occasional breeze stirs the fine dust lying across the road. Everyone welcomes the shade whenever it appears. A row of date palms offers relief for workers sharing a simple meal. Bread is divided fairly. A few olives. Some dried fish. Cool water from a clay jar. The food is plain. Yet after hours of labor, it feels satisfying. One older worker notices that a young apprentice has finished his bread quickly. Without hesitation, he tears his own loaf in half and quietly shares it. The apprentice thanks him. Nothing more is said. Generosity often looks very ordinary. Children witness moments like this again and again. They learn that communities survive through countless small kindnesses rather than rare heroic acts. These lessons become part of who they are long before they understand them fully. During the hottest hours, the pace naturally slows. Animals gather beneath whatever shade they can find. Goats lie quietly against cool walls. Dogs stretch beneath carts. Even birds seem to call less often beneath the bright afternoon sky. Inside many homes, mothers continue spinning flax into thread. The soft twisting motion never seems to end. The wheel turns. The fibers tighten. Another length of thread grows. Nearby, children practice weaving simple mats from reeds collected beside the Nile. Their first attempts are uneven. Some reeds slip loose. Others break entirely. Patient hands begin again. Failure carries little shame here. Everything worthwhile requires repetition. Perhaps this too shaped childhood in quiet ways. Children learned not to expect immediate success. Most skills arrived slowly. Every basket. Every loaf of bread. Every fishing net. Every carved chair. Every written symbol copied by a young scribe. All of them demanded patience before confidence. As afternoon slowly gives way to evening, the sunlight softens once again. The brilliant white of midday becomes rich gold. Long shadows stretch across the village streets. Workers begin their familiar walk home. The same roads that carried them toward labor in the morning now carry them gently back toward rest. Children recognize their parents from far away. Not by their faces alone. By the way they walk. By the baskets they carry. By the familiar sound of sandals brushing against the dusty ground. One small child runs toward her father. She stops before reaching him. His hands are still covered with clay from the day's work. Instead of lifting her immediately, he smiles warmly and says, "Just a moment." He washes his hands in a nearby basin. Only then does he kneel and embrace her. The hug lasts only a few seconds. Soon he stands again to carry tools inside. Work has followed him home. Yet for those few quiet moments, nothing else mattered. Perhaps that brief embrace remained in the child's heart for many years. Even when affection appeared only in small pieces, those pieces could become unforgettable. Night slowly returns. The cooking fires glow brighter as darkness spreads across the valley. Families gather once more inside simple homes where the walls still hold the warmth of the day. The scent of roasted onions mixes with fresh bread. Oil lamps cast gentle circles of light across woven baskets, clay jars, sleeping mats, and familiar faces. Outside, the Nile continues flowing beneath the stars, calm as ever. The river has watched children become adults for thousands of years. It has watched tiny hands grow strong enough to steer boats. It has watched young voices deepen into the voices of parents. It has watched one generation quietly teach the next without ever believing their ordinary days would one day become history. And as another peaceful evening settles across the ancient village, every gentle routine, every shared meal, every patient lesson, and every silent gesture of care becomes another thread woven into the quiet fabric of childhood beside the timeless waters of the Nile. Long after the evening meal has ended, after the last loaf of bread has been wrapped in linen for tomorrow, and after the final voices have grown quiet, the village slowly surrenders itself to the night once again. The moon hangs above the Nile like a pale lantern. Its reflection stretches across the water in a long silver path that gently bends with every ripple. A soft breeze carries the cool scent of wet reeds through the narrow streets between the mud brick homes. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird calls once before becoming silent again. The world seems to breathe more slowly now. Inside one small home, a father remains awake while everyone else has fallen asleep. His sandals rest beside the doorway. His hands are rough from years of cutting reeds and repairing fishing boats. Tiny scars cross his fingers, each one earned through ordinary work rather than extraordinary adventure. He sits quietly beside a nearly finished fishing net. The small oil lamp beside him burns low. Its light reaches only the circle around his knees. Patiently, he repairs a few broken knots. He could leave the work until morning. Yet morning always arrives too quickly. If the net is finished tonight, there will be one less worry waiting at sunrise. Across the room, his youngest daughter stirs in her sleep. She whispers something too softly to understand. Without thinking, the father sets the net aside. He walks over carefully, so the floor does not creak beneath his weight. The blanket has slipped from her shoulder. He gently pulls it back into place. His hand rests for only a moment upon her hair before he returns to his work. She never wakes. She may never remember this moment. Yet love often exists most deeply in moments that leave no memory at all. Many parents throughout ancient Egypt probably cared for their children in quiet ways that were almost invisible. A blanket adjusted during the night. A clay cup of cool water placed beside a sleeping mat before dawn. A torn sandal repaired while everyone else rested. Children rarely witness these acts. They simply woke the next morning to find the world ready for another day. As the first pale light slowly appears beyond the eastern hills, the village begins its familiar awakening once again. It is impossible to tell one morning from another unless someone looks very closely. The same paths wait beneath the same feet. The same ovens warm slowly. The same donkeys shake the dust from their coats. The same birds search the fields for scattered grain. Routine wraps gently around every household like a well-worn linen cloth. There is comfort inside such repetition. For children, familiar routines create a quiet feeling of safety. Even when life is difficult, knowing what tomorrow will bring allows the heart to rest. A young boy wakes before his brothers. He enjoys these few peaceful moments before the house becomes busy. Stepping outside, he looks toward the river. Thin morning mist floats above the water. Palm trees stand perfectly still. The world feels larger in these early hours. He wonders what lies beyond the distant desert. He has heard merchants speak of other towns. He has listened to travelers describe temples larger than any building he has ever seen. Sometimes, while carrying water or gathering reeds, he imagines those faraway places. Children in every age have looked beyond the horizon. Curiosity asks gentle questions long before responsibility provides answers. His mother calls softly from inside the house. The dream quietly folds itself away. There is grain to grind before breakfast. He returns without complaint. His imagination has not disappeared. It has simply learned to wait. Throughout the village, other children also carry quiet dreams. A young girl who watches the temple scribes wonders what it feels like to cover an entire sheet of papyrus with beautiful writing. An apprentice potter imagines shaping the finest bowl anyone has ever seen. Another child dreams only of becoming as skilled as his grandfather, whose fishing nets almost never tear. These hopes are modest. They grow naturally from the lives children already know. Their heroes are not distant kings. Their heroes live inside their own homes. A father who never wastes a movement. A grandmother who can weep perfectly even in fading light. An older sister who balances heavy water jars without spilling a single drop. Children watch these ordinary people with quiet admiration. They measure adulthood by usefulness rather than fame. As the morning continues, the village becomes alive with familiar sounds. Stone grinding against stone. The gentle splash of water poured into clay jars. Goats calling to one another. Wooden wheels turning. The steady tapping of carpenters shaping new furniture. The sounds never seem hurried. Together they create a slow rhythm that fills the air from sunrise until evening. A little girl walks beside her mother toward the river. Each carries a water jar. The mother's jar is much larger. The child struggles slightly beneath the weight of her own smaller vessel. Several times she stops to rest. Each time, her mother waits patiently without showing frustration. No one is keeping score. No one is measuring speed. The lesson is not about finishing first. The lesson is about learning to continue. Eventually they reach the riverbank. The morning sunlight dances across the water. Tiny fish flash beneath the surface before disappearing among waving reeds. The child kneels to fill her jar. She watches circles spread across the calm water after every movement. She smiles quietly. Even ordinary chores contain moments of quiet beauty if there is enough time to notice them. The walk home feels easier. The water is heavier now. Yet somehow the child carries herself with greater confidence. She has completed another task. No ceremony marks the occasion. Still, something inside her has grown. Much of childhood is built from these invisible moments. Small successes. Small responsibilities. Small acts of trust. Over many years they become character itself. Near the center of the village, an elderly scribe sits outside beneath the shade of a sycamore tree. His eyesight is no longer as sharp as it once was. His hands move more slowly. But children often gather nearby simply to watch him write. The reed pen glides carefully across papyrus. Dark ink forms graceful symbols. To the youngest children, the writing almost seems magical. One curious boy steps closer. The old scribe notices him immediately. Without speaking, he slides a broken piece of pottery toward the child. Beside it rests a reed pen with only a little life left. The boy understands the invitation. Carefully, awkwardly, he copies a single symbol. The lines are uneven. The shape leans to one side. The elderly man studies it for a long moment. Then he gives one gentle nod. Nothing more. The child's face brightens. That single nod carries enough encouragement to fill the rest of the day. Praise in the ancient world often arrived quietly. Perhaps because words themselves were used carefully. Approval needed no long speech. A smile. A nod. A trusted task. These simple gestures carried great weight. As the sun climbs higher, the familiar heat settles across the valley. The roads grow brighter. The stone walls release warmth collected throughout the morning. Workers move more slowly now, saving their strength for the long afternoon ahead. Children notice the changing pace. Even the adults who always seem strong pause beneath the shade. One father removes his sandals and rubs the dust from his tired feet. His son watches closely. Without being asked, the boy quietly brings over a clay cup filled with cool water. The father accepts it with grateful eyes. "Thank you," he says softly. Only 2 words. Yet the boy remembers them. Sometimes children treasure the simplest acknowledgments because they arrive so naturally. Neither of them thinks this moment will matter years later. But memory often keeps the quietest scenes. Not because they were dramatic. Because they felt safe. Because they carried warmth. Because for one brief moment, work stopped long enough for kindness to become visible. The afternoon drifts onward at its unhurried pace. A gentle breeze finally returns from the river, stirring palm leaves high above the fields. The heavy air begins to soften. Birds emerge once more from the shade. The scent of baking bread slowly rises again from village ovens preparing the evening meal. Children begin walking home along dusty paths they know so well that they hardly need to look where they are going. The same familiar homes appear one after another. The same worn doorways. The same woven baskets hanging from walls. The same cats waiting hopefully near kitchens. Everything welcomes them back. Home is rarely perfect. Yet its familiar sights quietly tell the heart that it belongs somewhere. As another evening slowly settles beside the timeless Nile, countless ordinary families once again gather beneath their simple roofs, carrying into the night the small moments of patience, trust, gentle work, and quiet affection that have slowly shaped another peaceful day, just as they have shaped so many childhoods before, and just as they will continue to do beneath the calm Egyptian sky for generations yet to come. The first light of another day spreads slowly across the valley, touching the highest palm leaves before reaching the rooftops of the village. For a few quiet moments, everything seems painted in soft gold. The mud brick walls glow gently after the coolness of the night. The narrow paths between the homes remain undisturbed except for the faint footprints left by someone who rose long before everyone else. A small breeze drifts across the Nile, carrying the fresh scent of water mixed with damp reeds and rich earth. Morning always arrives with familiar promises. There will be bread to bake, fields to tend, boats to prepare, animals to feed, tools to repair. Children wake knowing these things without anyone needing to remind them. Routine has become part of the rhythm of their breathing. Inside one home, an elderly woman is already sitting beside a low basket filled with linen that needs mending. Her eyesight is not as sharp as it once was, so she works slowly. Each stitch is placed with care. Her granddaughter sits nearby, watching in complete silence. The little girl has seen this work many times before, yet every morning it still seems interesting. The needle moves. The thread disappears. The cloth becomes whole again. The grandmother notices the curious eyes watching her. She smiles gently and places the needle into the child's hand. The girl hesitates. Her fingers feel awkward. The thread slips away again and again. She grows frustrated for only a moment. Then the older woman quietly guides her hands without saying very much. The lesson is calm. Mistakes are expected. No one is rushing. Outside, the village continues waking. A potter walks toward his workshop carrying damp clay wrapped carefully inside woven cloth. Nearby, two brothers lead a pair of oxen toward the fields before the sun grows too warm. The animals move with patient confidence, following paths they have traveled many hundreds of times. Dust rises beneath their heavy feet before settling once more. Nothing about the morning feels extraordinary. And perhaps that is exactly what makes it beautiful. Ordinary days often leave the deepest marks upon the heart. Children remember festivals. They remember unusual visitors. They remember great celebrations. But much of who they become is quietly shaped by thousands of mornings that seem almost identical. One after another. Season after season. Year after year. The marketplace slowly begins to fill. Merchants greet one another with familiar smiles. Bundles of vegetables are arranged upon woven mats. Fresh herbs release gentle scents into the warming air. Clay jars stand neatly beside baskets overflowing with onions, garlic, figs, beans, and dates. A young boy accompanies his uncle through the market. Today he is learning how to trade fairly. His uncle speaks politely with every merchant. He never raises his voice. He carefully examines each bundle before agreeing to a price. The child notices that respect seems just as valuable as the goods themselves. Business is not only about exchanging food or tools. It is also about trust. When the purchase is finished, the uncle places the basket into the boy's hands. It is heavier than expected. The boy adjusts his grip and follows without complaint. His uncle slows his own pace slightly. Not enough to make the child feel weak. Just enough to walk beside him. Small kindness often arrives in almost invisible ways. As the morning grows brighter, the sounds of work spread throughout the village. A carpenter smooths rough wood with careful strokes. Nearby, a mason chips patiently at a block of limestone. Further away, the rhythmic sound of grain being ground echoes from several homes at once. Each sound blends naturally with the others. Together they create the quiet music of everyday life. Children grow up surrounded by these sounds. Years later, hearing the scrape of stone or the turning of a grinding wheel may bring back memories they cannot fully explain. Memory is often carried by sound. A familiar voice. A wooden door opening. Sandals brushing softly across packed earth. The splash of water poured into a clay jar. These simple sounds become part of childhood itself. Near the riverbank, several young children gather reeds. The work is light compared to what adults do, yet it still requires patience. Some reeds are too thin. Others bend too easily. They learn which ones will become strong baskets and which should be left behind. One little boy reaches for a reed growing too close to deep water. Before he can step farther, his older sister gently places a hand upon his shoulder. She quietly shakes her head. Then she points toward a safer place nearby. He nods. No lecture follows. No scolding. Only gentle guidance. These moments happen countless times throughout childhood. Protection often appears with very few words. The siblings continue gathering reeds together. Their baskets slowly fill. The morning passes almost unnoticed. Nearby, a fisherman sits beneath the shade repairing a wooden oar that has begun to crack. His son watches every movement. The father examines the grain of the wood before carefully smoothing the damaged area. The boy asks only one question. Will it last? The father smiles softly. If we care for it. Then he returns to his work. The answer seems to describe much more than the oar itself. Many things last because they are cared for patiently. Homes, boats, fields, friendships, families, even hearts. The midday sun gradually climbs higher. Heat settles gently over the valley. Workers begin seeking small patches of shade whenever possible. A mother spreads a woven mat beneath a sycamore tree where her youngest children can rest for a little while. The leaves above move softly whenever the breeze arrives from the Nile. Sunlight dances through the branches, creating shifting patterns across the ground. One child falls asleep almost immediately. Another quietly watches ants carrying tiny pieces of grain far larger than themselves. Time seems to slow beneath the tree. The mother closes her eyes for only a few moments. Not quite sleeping. Simply resting. These brief pauses become precious. Life rarely allows long periods of stillness. When they appear, people welcome them without guilt. Farther away, an apprentice scribe practices writing upon broken pottery shards. Papyrus is valuable. Only after much practice will he earn the right to use it regularly. His teacher walks silently between the students. Sometimes he stops. Sometimes he adjusts the position of a hand. Occasionally he nods with quiet approval. The children concentrate deeply. Each symbol requires care. Their wrists begin to ache. Their backs grow stiff from sitting. Still they continue. Learning is another form of work. Patience shapes the mind just as labor shapes the body. As afternoon slowly begins its gentle descent, the light changes once again. The bright white sky softens into warmer colors. The shadows lengthen across the fields. Birds return to the riverbank. A faint breeze carries away some of the day's heat. Children helping in the fields begin gathering simple tools. Wooden hoes are cleaned before being placed carefully against the walls of storage sheds. Nothing is left carelessly upon the ground. Respect for tools is another lesson learned early. A well-kept tool feeds a family longer. Nearby, a grandfather and his grandson walk home together. Neither speaks very much. Their footsteps remain unhurried. The older man's pace has slowed over the years. The boy naturally adjusts his own speed without thinking. Sometimes the grandfather points toward distant birds flying above the marshes. Other times he simply enjoys the silence. The child does not find the silence uncomfortable. It has become familiar. Many relationships in the ancient world were built upon shared presence rather than constant conversation. Walking together. Working together. Eating together. Watching the river together. Words mattered. But they did not always carry the greatest meaning. The evening meal is prepared once more. Fresh bread rests upon simple woven trays. Stewed beans simmer gently inside clay pots. A few dates are placed in a small bowl for the children. The family gathers closely. The youngest child proudly announces that today she carried her own water jar without spilling any. Her father smiles. Your hands are growing stronger. Only a short sentence. Yet her face brightens with quiet pride. She will remember those words. Not because they were grand. Because they came at exactly the right moment. Sometimes growing up feels emotionally distant because praise arrives only occasionally. Yet when it does arrive, it shines warmly for a very long time. Night returns little by little. The sky above the Nile becomes filled with stars once again. Oil lamps glow softly inside each home. The air carries the comforting scent of warm bread, river water, dry earth, and cooling stone. Children settle onto woven mats, listening to the familiar sounds around them. A grandmother hums a melody she learned as a child. Outside, reeds whisper gently beside the flowing river. A dog circles twice before lying down to sleep. Somewhere far away, another family finishes another ordinary meal beneath another simple roof. Across the valley, countless lives follow the same peaceful rhythm. Not famous lives. Not lives remembered in carved monuments. Simply lives filled with steady work, quiet kindness, patient teaching, and gentle routines. These ordinary families rarely imagine that thousands of years later, anyone would wonder what their childhoods felt like. Yet if we listen carefully to the silence between the great stories of kings and monuments, we can almost hear them still. We hear the scrape of sandals across cool stone. The soft turning of a grinding wheel before dawn. The splash of water against a wooden boat. The quiet laughter of children beside the reeds. The gentle voice of a mother calling everyone home as evening settles over the timeless Nile, where another peaceful day slowly fades into another peaceful night, carrying with it countless small moments of care that were seldom spoken aloud but deeply woven into the hearts of those who grew up in this calm and ancient land. Before the first colors of dawn reach the eastern sky, the ancient village rests beneath a blanket of quiet darkness. The air has cooled enough that every breath feels gentle against the skin. The warmth stored inside the mud brick walls during yesterday slowly escapes into the night. Somewhere near the river, a frog calls from the reeds. Another answers from farther away. Their soft voices blend with the slow whisper of flowing water, creating a peaceful song that has echoed beside the Nile for thousands of years. Inside the homes, families remain asleep. Children lie close to their parents, wrapped in simple linen coverings that have become softer through years of careful use. A grandmother shifts quietly in her sleep. A baby sighs before settling once again. The small oil lamps burned low long ago, leaving only moonlight slipping gently through the open doorway. Even during these silent hours, the village feels alive. A cat moves carefully across a rooftop, searching for mice among baskets of stored grain. A gentle breeze stirs the hanging bundles of drying herbs beneath a shaded porch. Palm leaves sway almost silently above the narrow streets. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands attention. The world simply waits for morning. As the first faint light begins to appear, one elderly farmer is already awake. Years of habit have become stronger than sleep. His body rises before his thoughts fully do, just as it has for decades. He sits quietly for a moment, listening to the familiar sounds around him. Beside him, his wife is still resting peacefully. Across the room, two grandchildren sleep on woven reed mats, their blankets rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. The old man smiles softly. He remembers when his own children were that small. Those years now feel both distant and strangely close, like reflections shimmering upon the Nile. Memory has a gentle way of folding time together. He quietly steps outside. The morning air carries the rich scent of damp soil left by yesterday's irrigation. The stars are fading one by one, though the brightest still shine above the western horizon. He walks toward the fields without hurry, carrying only a wooden hoe balanced across his shoulder. Along the road he meets another farmer. Neither speaks immediately. They have greeted one another this way for many years. After a few peaceful steps, one quietly asks about the health of the other's family. They are well. The answer is simple. It is enough. Not every friendship requires long conversations. Many are built through years of walking the same paths together beneath the same rising sun. Back in the village, the first cooking fires begin to glow. A young mother carefully places dried reeds beneath a clay oven before gently blowing life into the small flame. Tiny sparks rise briefly into the cool morning air before disappearing into the growing light. Soon the familiar smell of fresh bread spreads through the village. Children begin waking one by one. A little boy stretches before rubbing sleep from his eyes. He hears the steady sound of grain being ground nearby. The sound comforts him. He has heard it every morning for as long as he can remember. To someone from another land, it might simply be the scrape of stone against stone. To him, it means home. The older sister is already helping. She carefully pours freshly ground flour into a large bowl while her mother adds water little by little. Together they knead the dough with practiced hands. The younger children watch closely. They know their turn will come. No one tells them exactly when. One morning, someone will simply hand them the bowl. Growing up often arrives that quietly. No announcement marks the moment. Responsibility simply changes hands. As the village becomes fully awake, the narrow streets fill with familiar movement. A shepherd leads a small flock of goats toward open grazing land. The bells tied loosely around a few animals make soft sounds with every careful step. Children pause to watch them pass. The goats seem unhurried. They already know the path. A potter walks by carrying newly dried bowls balanced carefully inside a woven basket. Each piece represents hours of patient work. The clay was gathered beside the river, mixed with water, shaped by steady hands, left to dry, fired with careful attention. Nothing useful comes quickly. Children witness this truth every day. Every object around them has required someone's time, someone's effort, someone's patience. Perhaps this is why waste is so uncommon. A broken tool is repaired. A torn basket is rewoven. A cracked water jar may serve another purpose instead of being thrown away. Children grow up understanding that care extends the life of almost everything. The same thought quietly reaches beyond objects. Relationships also require care. Families do not remain close without effort. Neighbors help one another because everyone understands that difficult seasons eventually visit every household. Near the riverbank, a father teaches his daughter how to untangle fishing lines. The task seems almost impossible at first. Thin cords twist around one another in confusing patterns. The girl pulls too quickly. The knot tightens. She sighs softly. Her father kneels beside her. He does not take the work away. Instead, he gently points toward the place where the knot first began. Start here. Only 2 words. She slows her hands. Little by little, the knot loosens. Soon the line lies straight once again. The father smiles. She smiles too. Sometimes the greatest lessons are not about fishing at all. Sometimes they are about patience. By late morning the marketplace is busy. Fresh vegetables fill woven baskets. Bright dates catch the sunlight. Bundles of papyrus reeds lean against shaded walls. Merchants greet familiar customers by name. A child carrying a small clay jug carefully waits while adults finish speaking. No one forgets the child. When it is finally his turn, the merchant kneels slightly so they can speak at the same height. What does your family need today? The boy proudly repeats the list his mother practiced with him before sunrise. He remembers every item. The merchant nods with approval. The child leaves carrying exactly what was needed. Trust grows stronger with every successful errand. Across the marketplace, an old storyteller rests beneath a sycamore tree while waiting for the hottest part of the day to pass. Several children quietly gather nearby. He speaks slowly. His voice is gentle from many years of use. He tells them about clever birds, patient farmers, kind neighbors, and rivers that reward those who respect their seasons. The stories are simple. No great battles fill them. No mighty kings appear. Instead, the stories remind children how to live well with ordinary people. How to listen. How to share. How to wait. These lessons stay with them long after individual words are forgotten. As midday approaches, the heat settles across the valley once again. The roads shimmer beneath the bright sun. Even the distant hills appear softened by the warm air. Families naturally slow their pace. Some rest beneath woven awnings. Others gather inside thick mud brick homes where the walls keep the rooms pleasantly cool. A young apprentice lies quietly beside the doorway for a few moments after finishing his meal. He watches sunlight creep slowly across the floor. Outside, he hears the steady tapping of a carpenter shaping wood. The rhythm almost becomes music. Before long, his eyes grow heavy. He sleeps for only a short while. Soon enough, work will continue. Rest is never laziness here. It is simply another part of the day's rhythm. When the afternoon breeze finally returns from the river, children once again fill the open spaces between the homes. Some practice throwing smooth stones toward a distant mark. Others weave tiny baskets from leftover reeds. A pair of sisters carefully shape little birds from damp clay. They laugh quietly when one bird leans sideways. Their grandmother watches from nearby. She says nothing. Her smile is enough. The girls begin again. Years from now, they may not remember the clay birds. But they may remember that gentle smile. Small moments often become the strongest memories because they ask nothing from us except to be present. As evening approaches, long shadows stretch across the fields. Farmers gather their tools. Fishermen guide their boats back toward shore. The smell of cooking fires begins drifting across the village once more. Children recognize these familiar signs without thinking. The day is folding itself toward rest. Another ordinary evening is waiting. Families slowly return to their homes, carrying baskets, tools, stories, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from work completed with care. No one believes today was extraordinary. Yet today has gently shaped every child who lived through it. A kind word offered beside the river. A patient lesson shared over tangled fishing line. A trusted errand completed in the marketplace. A grandmother's smile. A father's quiet guidance. These moments pass almost unnoticed while they happen. But together they become the invisible foundation of a childhood. And as darkness once again settles softly over the Nile, while the stars awaken above the silent desert and the cool evening breeze moves gently through the reeds, another peaceful day slips into memory, becoming one more quiet thread woven into the long and comforting story of ordinary life in ancient Egypt. The evening settles gently across the Nile Valley, as though the land itself has decided it is time to rest. The final warmth of the day lingers inside the mud brick walls while the open air slowly becomes cooler. The western sky glows with soft shades of amber and rose before fading into deep blue. Birds make their last quiet flights toward familiar trees, and the river reflects every changing color with calm patience. Children notice the evening differently than adults. For the older people, sunset often means another day of work has been completed. There is relief in that thought. Tired muscles can finally relax. Heavy baskets can be set down. Hands that have carried tools since sunrise may now rest for a little while. For children, however, sunset is often the happiest part of the day. The hardest work is finished. Parents are nearby again. The pace of life becomes softer. A little more laughter finds its way into the narrow streets between the homes. One small group of children gathers beside a low wall where the last sunlight still reaches the ground. They collect smooth pebbles from the edge of the road and quietly invent a simple game. The rules are not written anywhere. They have been learned from older brothers and sisters. One child carefully arranges the stones into a small circle. Another tosses a pebble gently toward the center. The others watch with patient attention. There is no prize waiting for the winner. The joy comes from playing together before darkness arrives. Nearby, several mothers prepare the evening meal. Fresh bread cools upon woven trays. Clay pots filled with lentils continue to simmer over glowing coals. The smell of roasted onions drifts through the village, mixing with the scent of warm earth that has finally begun to release the heat stored throughout the day. A young boy carries a small bundle of dry reeds toward his home. His arms ache slightly. The bundle is not especially heavy, but he has already spent many hours helping in the fields. As he reaches the doorway, his mother notices the tired expression upon his face. She quietly takes the bundle from his hands. "You've done enough for today," she says gently. The words are simple. There is no grand display of affection. Yet the boy feels lighter almost immediately. Sometimes love appears as permission to rest. Inside the home, the family gathers around the evening meal. Everyone sits close together upon woven mats. The room is small, but no one seems troubled by the lack of space. The oil lamp standing near the wall casts a warm golden light across familiar faces. The youngest child reaches eagerly for a piece of bread. His older sister gently tears it into smaller pieces before handing it back. He smiles. She smiles too. No one comments on the gesture. It feels completely natural. These quiet habits of caring often become invisible because they happen every day. Yet children notice them more than adults realize. Across the village, another family shares a meal after returning from the river. The father has caught enough fish to provide supper for everyone. He carefully removes the bones before giving the largest pieces to the youngest children. Only after they have eaten does he serve himself. His son watches this without saying a word. Years later, when he has children of his own, he may find himself doing exactly the same thing without remembering when he first learned it. Some lessons never require explanation. They simply pass from one generation to the next through ordinary acts. After supper, the air becomes wonderfully pleasant. The day's heat finally loosens its grip upon the valley. Families step outside their homes to enjoy the evening breeze. Neighbors greet one another quietly. An elderly man settles upon a low stone near his doorway while carefully carving a small wooden spoon. His hands move slowly now. Every movement is deliberate. A little girl from the neighboring house wanders over and watches with great interest. She says nothing. She simply sits beside him. After a while, he places a small piece of wood into her hands. "Would you like to try?" Her eyes brighten. She nods. The carving is uneven. The edges remain rough. The old man gently adjusts the way she holds the knife. He never takes the wood away from her. Instead, he allows her hands to learn through practice. The spoon may never become useful. That hardly matters. The memory will. Nearby, a grandmother begins telling a story beneath the evening sky. Several children gather around her. Adults continue their own quiet conversations while listening with only half an ear. They already know the story well. They have heard it since they themselves were children. It speaks of a patient farmer who never rushed the seasons. Every year he planted carefully. Every year he waited. Sometimes the harvest was plentiful. Sometimes it was modest. Yet he always thanked the river for whatever it provided. The children listen closely. The story is not exciting. There are no frightening creatures or dramatic adventures. Instead, it reminds them that patience often brings peace. Perhaps this is why such stories lasted so long. They matched the slow rhythm of everyday life. Night grows deeper. The stars appear one after another until the sky seems filled with countless tiny lights. Without the glow of large cities, the heavens stretch endlessly above the valley. Children lying upon woven mats often gaze upward until sleep quietly finds them. One little boy asks his grandfather why there are so many stars. The old man smiles thoughtfully. They help us remember how large the world is. The child accepts the answer without question. He continues looking upward. Sometimes simple answers are enough. The grandfather does not claim to know everything. He offers only what life has taught him. That quiet honesty becomes another lesson. As the evening grows later, the village becomes calmer still. One by one, neighbors return indoors. The sound of conversation slowly fades. Only the gentle chorus of insects remains. The Nile continues flowing through the darkness, never pausing, never hurrying. Its steady movement comforts everyone who has lived beside it. Generations have fallen asleep listening to this same river. Its familiar sound becomes part of childhood itself. Many children probably believed they could never sleep without hearing the water somewhere in the distance. The river watches over every stage of life. It welcomes newborn children. It reflects the faces of young apprentices learning their trades. It carries fishermen through countless mornings. It watches elderly grandparents walking slowly along its banks. Every generation sees its own reflection upon the same peaceful surface. Inside one home, a mother quietly repairs a tear in her son's linen tunic. The child is already asleep. His breathing is slow and even. The tunic rests across her lap beneath the soft glow of the lamp. Each stitch is careful. She knows it must last many more months. The fabric has already been patched before. She does not mind. Repairing clothing has become another familiar evening task. When she finishes, she folds the tunic neatly beside his sleeping mat. Tomorrow morning he will simply find it waiting there. He may never think about how it became whole again. Many children rarely witness the quiet work that surrounds their comfort. Parents rise before dawn. Grandparents remain awake after everyone else has gone to sleep. Someone is always preparing for tomorrow. Perhaps this is one reason growing up could sometimes feel emotionally distant. Much of love happened quietly, behind the scenes, woven into daily responsibilities instead of spoken aloud. Children often experienced the results without seeing the effort itself. Yet that effort surrounded them every day. As midnight approaches, the cool air drifts gently through the open doorway. The oil lamp flickers one final time before being carefully extinguished. Darkness fills the room, but it is a friendly darkness. Everyone knows tomorrow will arrive just as today did. The same birds will greet the sunrise. The same paths will lead toward the fields. The same boats will drift upon the Nile. The same bread will be baked before the village is fully awake. There is deep comfort in knowing that life continues with gentle certainty. And beneath the endless stars, beside the patient waters of the Nile, another ordinary evening quietly becomes another treasured memory, joining thousands of other peaceful nights that together shaped the quiet hearts of children growing up in the timeless embrace of ancient Egypt. And now, the village has become completely still. The final cooking fire has faded into soft gray ash. The last quiet conversation has ended. The wooden boats rest gently against the riverbank, tied with familiar ropes that have weathered many seasons. Fishing nets hang quietly beside simple homes, drying beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The Nile continues its endless journey. It does not hurry. It does not stop. It simply flows, just as it has through every childhood, every harvest, every quiet morning, and every peaceful evening that has come before. The moon climbs a little higher, washing the valley in silver light. Palm trees stand motionless against the night sky. The warm breeze that carried dust across the fields during the day has softened into a cool whisper moving gently through the reeds. Somewhere far away, a night bird calls once. Then silence returns. Inside the mud brick homes, families rest close together upon woven reed mats. The youngest children sleep deeply after long days filled with simple work and quiet discovery. Their breathing rises and falls with the same steady rhythm as the river beyond the village. Parents finally allow their tired hands to become still. Hands that kneaded bread before sunrise. Hands that gathered grain beneath the bright afternoon sun. Hands that repaired nets, shaped clay, carved wood, lifted baskets, carried water, comforted children, and quietly prepared another ordinary day. Those hands now rest peacefully. Grandparents sleep with gentle smiles that only the night can see. Perhaps they dream of younger days beside this same river. Perhaps they hear familiar voices carried softly through memory. Perhaps they simply rest beneath the endless sky that has watched over every generation before them. The children know very little about the future. They do not know which paths they will someday walk. They do not know which skills they will master. They do not know how many mornings they will greet beside the Nile. Tonight, none of that matters. For now, they are simply safe. Wrapped in quiet. Surrounded by family. Held gently within the slow rhythm of ordinary life. The great monuments that future generations will admire stand far away. The names of kings belong to stone carvings and temple walls. But here, in this peaceful village, history has always belonged to ordinary people. To the baker rising before dawn. To the fisherman patiently mending his nets. To the mother quietly folding a blanket over a sleeping child. To the father placing the largest piece of bread into small waiting hands. To the grandmother humming an old melody while weaving flax into thread. These lives were rarely written down. Their voices were carried instead by habit, by kindness, by steady work, and by love shown through countless quiet moments. They remind us that the heart of history is not always found in great victories or famous names. Sometimes it lives inside a shared meal after a long day. Sometimes it rests in the gentle nod of a teacher. Sometimes it hides inside the careful repair of a worn sandal, or in the patient hands that untangle a fishing line beside the river. And perhaps that is why growing up could feel emotionally distant, while also being deeply connected. Affection was rarely loud. It did not always arrive wrapped in long conversations. Instead, it appeared before sunrise with fresh bread waiting upon the table. It appeared in water carried home after a tiring walk. It appeared in blankets adjusted during the night while children continued sleeping. It appeared in trust, in responsibility, in quiet patience, and in the simple promise that tomorrow, everyone would wake together once again. Those small acts became the language of love. A language spoken without many words. A language understood by tired hands, familiar footsteps, and peaceful hearts. Now the village sleeps. The river keeps flowing. The stars remain above, just as they did thousands of years ago. The breeze moves softly through the papyrus reeds, carrying with it the scent of cool water and fertile earth. Nothing asks to be remembered. Nothing asks to be hurried. The ancient night simply continues, calm and unbroken. So let the sounds of the Nile grow softer. Let the footsteps upon the dusty roads disappear into memory. Let the warm ovens cool. Let the oil lamps become tiny points of fading light before gently slipping into darkness. Imagine the river moving quietly beneath the moon. Imagine the reeds swaying with every gentle breath of wind. Imagine the village resting peacefully, untouched by worry, surrounded by the timeless comfort of another ordinary night. And as the ancient world grows quieter with every passing moment, allow the stars above Egypt to keep watch until morning comes once more. For now, there is only stillness. Only the slow river. Only the whisper of the breeze. Only the peaceful rhythm of a sleeping world. And somewhere beside the endless waters of the Nile, beneath a sky unchanged by centuries, the night carries every tired soul gently toward quiet dreams.